All right. So we are excited to be able to share this with you, those that are on the line today, to walk through this nonprofit training. Again, my name is Maria Taylor. I am the CEO of MNA Tax and More, where we have an array of products and services that we provide for our clients. And today I just wanted to go in lieu of May 15th, that is quickly approaching. I wanted to go ahead and talk about this nonprofit so that we can get those who are interested a better understanding of what a nonprofit is and how to keep yourself in a place where you're on the right side of the IRS and not the bad side. Uh, so let's dive into it. Okay. So here are the benefits. The benefits of tax exemption. Exemption from federal income tax deductible on contributions, possible exemptions from state income, sales, and employment taxes, reduced postal rate, exemptions from federal unemployment tax, and tax exempt financing. A lot of times when we're doing our nonprofits, we're so busy into planning and trying to get everything in alignment that sometimes we don't always think about these things. So I wanted to bring it to your forefront that as a nonprofit, there are some great benefits. Also, there is some things that you need to do to maintain your nonprofit status. So just because you initially got your nonprofit and IRS has stamped it and say, yes, you are a nonprofit, it doesn't stop there. So you have to make sure that whatever you went through to get your nonprofit, you got to keep to maintain it. So here are some things we need to look at. So to help you be able to understand, how do I maintain my nonprofit status? Establishing a corporate board, of course, we know that. All nonprofits must elect officers and appoint a board of directors. One, you got to have purpose. Why did you form this nonprofit? Then you have to document any donations received. Now, when it comes to nonprofits, we have the vision of what we want to do, the programs, but when it starts coming down to money, it gets kind of muddled. We know we want the money to come in, but it's very important that you keep track of and document your donations. Uh, Adhering to approval process for contracts and other agreements. That's if you're going after grants. Um, for each grant that you get, there are going to be stipulations that whoever you're getting the money from, that they're going to require of you. So you want to make sure you're reviewing that and that you are approving uh, the requirements that they're asking of you. Then understanding lobbying laws, okay? Uh, as a nonprofit, there is something that says, will you be doing any campaigning? So you want to definitely avoid all political campaign activities because with that line, drawing the line between church and state, we have to make sure that that line doesn't get blurred. And then paying taxes on unrelated business income. And it's called UBIT. And what that is that if you're doing something outside of your nonprofit, you know, such as, you selling books, that is considered unrelated business income, depending on what your nonprofit was set up as. So anytime you uh and we'll go into that a little later. Me being a numbers person, I want to get into the numbers, but we're gonna go into that a little later. Uh, then you have to make sure you file all the returns that is required. So yearly, after you have received your nonprofit status. To keep it, you have to maintain filing the annual information returns, the forms, the tax returns that you're supposed to file on behalf of that nonprofit. And here is now the compliance part of being a nonprofit. You have your annual filings, which is including your 990s. Your 990s make up what your donations are, how much you received that year, and also what you spent that year for that particular nonprofit. And then here's the UBIT that we discussed earlier. So anything under 1,000 that you made that was not the same as your nonprofit, that's considered tax free. You don't have to worry about filing for that. But if you made more than 1,000 that's unrelated to your nonprofit, then you have to file a nonprofit. Uh, you have to file a UBIT tax return. And I believe that's a 990T. Um, if you're not a church, then you have to file also a franchise tax return, which a lot of people don't know, don't understand. And, you go and look for your status and you don't have a status anymore because if you do not file that franchise tax return, they can revoke your nonprofit status. So you want to make sure that you keep that in alignment. So if you are a church, you meet on a regular, you have a location, you can file an additional form to avoid having to file a franchise tax return. So that's good news. Ongoing compliance, avoid activities that could jeopardize your tax exempt status. These include excessive lobbying, political campaign involvement, and private benefit inurement. Comply with employment tax requirements if you're a nonprofit and you have employees. Fulfill public disclosure requirements such as making your Form 990 available to the public. And then maintain accurate records of financial transactions, donations, and other relevant information. Remember that maintaining a tax exempt status involves ongoing diligence. It's not one that you get it, you set it, and you forget it. No, you gotta continue to do your due diligence to make sure that you maintain because being having an exempt status is a privilege. So you want to make sure you continue to keep that privilege. Regularly review your organization's activities, financial records, and compliance with IRS guidelines. So a lot of times we think there's nothing else we can do. But yes, throughout the year, we want to make sure that we are maintaining uh, that status and we're making sure we're doing the right thing according to the IRS because we don't want to get on their radar. That's for sure. So this is how we kind of help nonprofits. We help by suggesting if you don't have a software that you are using, we are suggesting that you do use a software. One, it helps in record keeping. It helps you to make sure that you're keeping good records, and as well as it allows you on a monthly basis to kind of see where you are. Instead of It helps you on a monthly basis to kind of see where you are to ensure that you're doing the right thing concerning your business. Because this nonprofit, this is a business and it is a privilege. So you want to make sure that you're doing the due diligence and keeping that. So your QuickBooks will give you an income statement, and it also helps with the cash flow projections. So as you get into understanding on this side, the business side of running a nonprofit, you want to be able to set up budgeting, set up a budget for whatever you're trying to do. If you're trying to put on a program, if you're trying to raise some funds, you should have a budget set up for that. And the cash flow projection helps you in setting up those budgets to make sure that you're on target, or to see whether or not maybe you need to make sure you're doing more fundraising, so that you can have enough to take care of all the needs of that nonprofit. Um, One thing is that if you're doing nonprofit work, we suggest have Mile IQ. Mile IQ helps you in making sure I have uh, an accurate record of all the mileage, because from month to month, and especially at the end of the year, you're not going to remember every place you went. So this Mile IQ helps you to know whether or not these are mileage that I'm using for the nonprofit. So you want to make sure you have all that. Then, if you have people who are working for the nonprofit, uh, that's an independent contractor, anyone that you have paid $600 or more, you have to make sure you get them a 1099 NEC. And then here's the thing for those who are pastors. If you are clergy, you are considered to having a dual employment, which means you should be a W-2, but at the same time, the federal government looks at you as a self-employed person, which means you're dual in your nature. So uh you won't have the Social Security or the Medicare taken out of your check, because that is considered self-employed. And so with that, as a self-employed and as a clergy, you're able to write off expenses. So in helping you to do that, we're able to give you the advice you need to let you know, okay, this is what you need to do in this case, and this is what you need to do in another case. Each one of them is different. But this is how we assist you in looking at your nonprofit to see whether or not you're putting the right things in place, so that when it comes to your record keeping, that you had that in a good place. Next, and we'll be taking questions a little later. So if you got some, that'd be great. So as an added bonus, some people know about it, some don't. There are some nonprofit exempt forms that you can use. There's that sales and use tax exempt form. So buying uh, if you're buying things for the nonprofit, you can use this so that you won't have to pay the sales tax on it. Then if you're renting a hotel, you can use this hotel occupancy to help you with, because we know hotels are expensive, especially when it comes down to taxes and all the gratuities that they add onto when you're renting out that space. So this form, I use it all the time when I'm traveling. This form helps to take off those tax exempt uh, taxes, so that you can lower your bill when it comes to checkout. Oh, so this is what we have coming up. We have an upcoming class that's going to be starting on May 21st to June 18th. And we will be having that class one night a week for 5 classes. And in this class, we're going to teach you about bookkeeping. We're going to teach you about QuickBooks. Um, and definitely want you to have your own so that you can be able to walk through it and have any questions that you may want to answer. We help you to understand your chart of accounts because of that's the whole thing for your bookkeeping. If you don't have that right, then the whole bookkeeping is going to be messed up. So we help you with the chart of accounts. We help you understand um, how to invoice, how to do your billing. Um, Also your reporting, which is key. What does a income statement look like? What does a cash flow, how do I do a cash flow projection? So we can go over all of that in our classes. And that starts on May 21st. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can um, take a picture of that QR code and sign up for that class. We have limited seating. So we want you to go ahead and get in that class as soon as possible because the more you know, the better you can run your business. And here it is. Any questions? This is contact information. This is a appointment where you can set up an appointment with us if you want to go into greater details, and our website. Does anyone have any questions? You can unmute yourself. I think a few of you may have came in after we have talked about paying taxes on unrelated business income. So you definitely want to keep that in your mind when you're selling items that doesn't relate to your nonprofit business. If it's more than 1,000, then you have to do another return, and that return is a 990T. If it's less than 1,000, then you don't have to report that income. Okay. Any questions? If you have a question, you can unmute yourself or anything you want to ask about the nonprofit.
I have a question, Miss Maria.
Okay.
Now, when you were talking about the forms and making, you were saying something about making sure that we log all of our transactions. What is this like? If you haven't had any uh, fundraisers or any events, what is the stipulation to that if your business hasn't had it, and how long can you go without having active business, sorry about that, active business, uh to be considered under the radar with the IRS? That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, you still need to file the form. You just say zero because
Okay.
you want to make sure that you are keeping your status.
Okay.
So, the IRS understands that for a few years you're getting things in place,
Hmm.
but to maintain your status, you still have to have those forms. Because if you don't have those forms, then eventually you'll lose that status and you have to start all over again.
And how do you keep a track of knowing what your status is and standing status? Does that come with when you file your taxes and you file the forms?
Well, once one, you know when you actually got your 501(c)(3),
Hmm.
and if you filed any of those forms. If you have not, we have a way of going in and looking at the system to see if your status is still good or not.
Okay.
If by chance the status isn't good, we're able to help you to reinstate it.
Okay. Okay.
So that will be, a conversation that we could have at a later date to check your status to see if it's still good.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Well, Good question. But yeah, definitely, as I was stating before, if you have, if you're not a church, because there's a certain, form that you can do to fill out for churches so that churches don't have to do the franchise tax return. But if you're not a church, every business in the state of Texas has to have that franchise tax form filled out along with their 990.
Got
Okay.
it.
Let me see what else. Mhm. That was like, yeah. So the annual filing, again, this is a 990T if you're having, so say for instance, you're author and you wrote a book and that book made 999, then you don't have to file an extra return. But if it made 1,000 and more, then you have to do that 990T form along with your 990 for the nonprofit. And again, uh, if you're a church, you don't have to file it. But if you are a church, you need to file that form so that you can get exemptions from franchise tax only. You still got to do 990, but so that you can get the exemption from the franchise tax. Anyone else have a question? Anything you want to ask regarding the nonprofit?
Miss Maria.
Yes.
That nine that you say is a 1090, did you say 1099? Uh,
990.
okay.
990 is for the nonprofit. 990T is for the business other than the nonprofit. Like
And
I
that's
said,
the
if
one
you
that
are,
go,
mhm.
go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, okay, no, I was saying that's the one that if you have the nonprofit, but then you're selling T-shirts and your
Hmm.
T-shirts made more than 1,000, that's unrelated to your nonprofit. So then you would need to do that 990T form.
Okay. I
Okay.
think that's what I did for, because I had to fill out a form for the book. That's why I came back up to ask the question when you mentioned about this for the book, because when you go to the publisher like Amazon and stuff, they have that form. I just couldn't remember what it was called. I think I
Yeah.
did one of those already. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Hmm.
Yeah. And, definitely you should have it. If you did it, you should have a copy of that yourself to make sure. But yeah, we can have a conversation to find out where your nonprofit stands now, to see if it's still in good standings. Um, and then we can go from there. I think
Yes, ma'am.
the other thing is, for pastors to understand that you have a dual uh, employment, that you're both your employee and you're also a contractor. So you want to make sure that when you're doing your payroll, that you have a W-2, but then also you don't have to have the Social Security and the Medicare because you're going to get taxed at 15% on the side of the contracting side, which means that also gives you the ability to have a Schedule C and to be able to write off uh, some of your expenses. So that's kind of good. Any other questions?
I have a question. So as a pastor or a minister, if your church is not giving you anything regarding like the funds that they've given to you, you mentioned that W-2, would that be issued more like a 1099 on behalf of the church, or does the church have to give just a statement with the giving statement or the pay statement suffice for that?
Well, if you're working on behalf of a church, it depends on if you were deemed as an employee of the church. Um, then they should give you at least a 1099. But if they don't give you a 1099, give you some kind of letter of how much you were paid. But the proper way is to give you a W-2. Don't fill out the Social Security or the Medicare, and allow that to be taken out for you as a self-employed person. But again, a lot of people don't understand that, so they're doing it all kind of ways. So, but according to the IRS, you are deemed as a dual employee and contractor at the same time. Why, I don't know, but that's how it is. Did I answer your question?
You did. And you mentioned that form regarding the benefit of travel, using hotel, when you're traveling, conferences and things of that nature. Could you share that again on how that works?
Sure. That's this form here. Hotel occupancy tax exemption. And hotels are kind of cracking down on it. So, because, they're saying like anybody can give us one of these forms. We don't know if it's right or not. So you definitely want to make sure that your status is good with the state, so that when they do look you up, they can find you. But this is the hotel tax exemption.
Thank you so much.
And the other thing about this is that want to make sure that there is like a multiple state, because this one is good for Texas. So if you're going to different states, you want to make sure you have the correct state that you can get that exemption from. But yeah, it helps a lot as far as when especially as a pastor traveling, where you're able to get savings on the taxes. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming in and listening to our presentation. We'll be doing something similar to this on a monthly basis on different topics, but we wanted to start off with the nonprofit, since May 15th is right around the corner. If you have not gotten those done, we're able to help you with that. So you can set up an appointment, which is that calendar. You can set up an appointment with us so that we can go ahead and make sure your 990s are done, and then we'll let you know uh, how you can also. I think Brandon is on here. As a pastor, you can file that extra form so that you can get the exemption um, from filing the franchise tax return. And that could be, a savings for you. All right. Well, I'm not going to hold you. I thank you for your time, and we look forward to helping you in the near future. Thank you so much. Have an awesome day.
Thank you.